My parents had broadcast to everyone that they were blessed with triplets, a joyous declaration that starkly contrasted with my own hidden existence in the basement's oppressive gloom. I was the clandestine fourth, a backup child chillingly designated for spare parts, and for 13 agonizing years, I was forced to watch my identical sisters navigate their lives. Their vibrant experiences reduced to grainy pixels on cold, impersonal security monitors. The defining moment of that long confinement arrived when my mother, with a chillingly detached composure, would routinely draw my blood for compatibility tests, all in anticipation of the day they might need to harvest my kidney for one of my ailing sisters. But that day, the tables turned. All three of my sisters, in an act of desperate solidarity, helped me engineer my escape, shattering their bedroom window in the dead of night, precisely at 3 a.m. This dramatic revelation didn't just expose their parents to the bewildered neighbors. It laid bare the truth of a monstrous deception, exposing how they had been illicitly claiming $2.8 million in insurance payouts for triplets while secretly keeping a fourth child, me, hidden away as a living, breathing organ bank. Indeed, my parents had meticulously crafted the public narrative of having triplets, a story they spun with practiced ease. But I was the unspoken fourth, the grim just-in-case child, kept out of sight, locked away in the chilling shadows of the basement as a contingency plan should anything ever befall the others. My entire existence revolved around that subterranean cage, my only window to the world being the flickering feeds of security cameras, through which I observed my sisters' lives unfold. It was a strange, distant intimacy. Yet, despite my imprisonment, my sisters, Lily, Emma, and Olivia, would bravely sneak down after dusk, their footsteps barely whispers on the cold concrete, bringing me precious scraps of food they'd salvaged from dinner and patiently teaching me the lessons they'd absorbed at school. On our shared 13th birthday, while a festive cake and exuberant laughter filled the upstairs, they smuggled down a single cupcake for me, a solitary candle flickering defiantly in the oppressive darkness. Make a wish to get out, they'd whispered, their identical faces etched with a desperate hope. But how does one escape when, by all legal and social standards, you simply do not exist? The basement became my entire universe the very day we returned home from the sterile confines of the hospital. While my siblings were each granted the official stamp of Identity Fair Crisp, new birth certificatism birthright was merely a dusty storage room furnished with a thin, unyielding mattress. My mother, with an unsettling simplicity that chilled me to the bone, laid out the stark reality. Insurance covers 3 babies, a 4th would bankrupt us, darling. But don't worry, we're keeping you safe down here. Just in case, what chilling scenario did that phrase truly allude to? The implications were murky, terrifying unknown, a concept my young mind struggled to grasp. I spent countless hours watching my siblings grow up, their lives playing out in fragmented, grainy moments on a perpetually flickering monitor. Their first tentative steps, their garbled first words, the monumental first day of school, all of it unfolded before my eyes, yet utterly beyond my reach. Each sister was labeled on the screen, a chillingly clinical designation: Lily, camera 1, Emma, camera 2. Olivia, camera 3, but there was no camera for me, no name. When my mother, in her rare visits, remembered to bring food, she'd simply refer to me as Spare, a moniker that solidified my existence as an object, a contingency. Near my makeshift bed, in a small metal lockbox, lay the very documents that would become my macabre primer on literacy. From these official papers, I painstakingly taught myself to read, decoding the cold, hard figures that dictated my fate. Maximum coverage for triplet birth, $2.8 million, and directly beneath that, a brutal, jarring contrast, quadruplet birth, $50,000 total. The financial disparity was grotesque, a clear, horrifying motivation for my hidden existence. But it was another document, nestled deeper within the box, that truly made my stomach twist into an icy knot of dread. It coldly stated my rare blood type, O negative, universal donor, and then, the final crushing blow, perfect match probability among identical siblings, 100%. It was a scientific seal on my horrifying purpose. An undeniable confirmation that I was not a child, but a biological resource. My sisters stumbled upon me by sheer accident when we were 5, their innocent game of hide-and-seek unwittingly unearthing my secret prison. Emma, with a child's relentless curiosity, discovered the old, creaky basement door. 3 identical, wide-eyed faces peered at me through the narrow crack, their expressions a mixture of fear and wonder. "Are you our ghost?" Lily whispered, her voice barely audible, confirming my spectral existence in their minds. That night, defying the unspoken rules of the house, they came back. And every single night thereafter, they'd meticulously wait for the rhythmic cadence of our parents' snoring to begin, a nightly signal of their slumber, before carefully creeping down, their arms laden with whatever small morsels of food they'd managed to pilfer from dinner. Olivia, ever the studious one, patiently guided me through more complex words and sentences, elevating my self-taught reading skills. Emma, with a natural flair for numbers, introduced me to the mysteries of mathematics. Lily, with a child's boundless creativity, brought her vibrant drawings, carefully taping them to the drab, concrete walls, transforming my grim cell into a gallery of childlike wonder. "Why don't you live upstairs with us?" they would often ask, their young minds grappling with the injustice. "Because I'm the emergency one," I would parrot back, repeating the chilling phrase I've been indoctrinated with. They didn't truly understand the weight of those words, not fully. And truthfully, neither did I, not then. Not until Olivia became grievously ill. She was merely 8 years old when the doctors delivered the grim news: significant problems with her kidneys. I watched, a silent, helpless observer, as our parents paced frantically across the living room on the monitors, their anxiety palpable even through the grainy screen. "We have options," my mother declared, her voice tight but resolute, a predatory gleam in her eyes. "We've been smart. We've been prepared." That night, the familiar rustle of my sister's descent never came. I could see them on the screens, huddled together in their bedroom, their small bodies convulsing with silent sobs. The crushing loneliness of their absence was almost as agonizing as the dread of what was to come. The very next morning, my father descended into the basement, a sterile medical kit clutched in his hand, its metal glinting menacingly. "Just some tests," he said, his voice a strained attempt at reassurance. "Standard stuff, you know," but the needle, when it plunged into my arm, hurt far more than standard. 6 vials, one by one, slowly filled with my blood, each crimson drop a confirmation of my purpose. He meticulously checked my eyes, my reflexes, then pressed hard on my stomach, precisely where my kidneys lay. "Perfect," he muttered, a cold satisfaction in his tone. Absolutely perfect, the word, in that context, was a condemnation. Olivia, thankfully, eventually recovered with medication, a temporary reprieve for us all. But the consequence of my potential usefulness was immediate and chilling. The heavy basement door was thereafter locked from the outside, the click of the latch echoing like a final pronouncement of my permanent imprisonment. Yet, even through this intensified captivity, my sisters refused to be severed from me. They began leaving me small, folded notes, clandestinely slipped under the door, their hurried scrawls a lifeline of hope and defiance. "We're trying to find a way," one would read, followed by another's fierce promise: "We won't let them hurt you. You're our sister, not spare parts." These words, powerful in their simplicity, were a constant reminder that I was loved, that I was more than just a resource. Years, long and monotonous, blurred into an indistinguishable continuum within that suffocating basement. I meticulously exercised, forcing my body into repetitive motions in the cramped space, driven by the grim mandate to stay healthy to keep the spare parts in pristine condition. My education continued, a clandestine curriculum pieced together from old, worn textbooks my sisters ingeniously smuggled down, each dog-eared page a fleeting glimpse into the vibrant world above. I watched their lives unfold on the flickering screen. Their first days at school, the tentative formation of friendships, the everyday dramas and joys of a life I was denied. Every birthday became a bittersweet ritual. 3 candles burning brightly upstairs, celebrating lives lived fully. One single, solitary candle flickering in the darkness of my prison downstairs, representing my muted existence. The wish, year after year, remained agonizingly the same: to get out, to simply be. When we turned 12, an incident occurred that shattered the fragile veneer of our existence. Emma broke her arm, a gruesome injury where the bone tore through the skin. I watched the horror unfold on the monitor, my parents exchanging a silent, knowing look that spoke volumes. My father's hand, with a chilling deliberateness, instinctively went to his pocket, the very pocket where he kept the basement key. "No," I whispered to the empty room, a raw plea tearing from my throat. "Please, no." My entire being screamed in silent terror, the immediate threat of my purpose becoming terrifyingly real. But, miraculously, Emma's arm healed cleanly, without complication. The key remained untouched in his pocket, a reprieve that left me shaken but, for now, safe. The worst part of my existence wasn't the relentless isolation, the gnawing hunger from eating scraps, or the bone-chilling cold of sleeping on concrete. No, the most profound torment was watching my sisters live, truly live, knowing that I existed solely as their backup, their walking medical supply, a ghost child perpetually waiting to be harvested. It was an existential dread that permeated every waking moment. Once, in a desperate attempt, they tried to tell someone. Lily, overcome by the weight of our secret, broke down to her teacher, confessing the existence of her other sister. The school, naturally, called our parents. That night, on my monitor, I watched my mother weave a masterful web of deceit. Explaining away Lily's imaginary quadruplet as a complex trauma response to being a triplet, she spoke of Lily's creative and troubled mind, ultimately recommending therapy, a chillingly subtle way to silence the truth and manage the narrative. After that, the old, clunky lock on my door was upgraded to a cold, impersonal digital keypad, a stark symbol of my increasingly stringent captivity. On our 13th birthday, a milestone that should have been celebrated with unadulterated joy, I sat cloaked in the basement's impenetrable darkness. The sounds of a vibrant party drifting down from upstairs, the infectious laughter, the pulsating music, the disembodied voices of children I would never meet. It was an auditory torture, a cruel reminder of the life denied to me. As midnight chimed, breaking the spell of the party, my sisters, true to their defiant spirit, snuck down. They carried a single, hidden cupcake, its lonely candle flickering precariously in the profound gloom. "Make a wish," they whispered, hairs tracing luminous paths down their 3 identical faces, each reflection mirroring the other's sorrow and fierce determination. "Wish to get out. We're going to help you, we promise." I closed my eyes, the familiar warmth of their unwavering love momentarily eclipsing the bitter cold of my reality. I blew out the candle, my wish a silent, fervent prayer for the only thing I had ever truly wanted, to exist. But when morning came, heralded not by sunlight but by the dull hum of my solitary existence, I was still in the basement. Still watching their lives through the distorting haze of grainy screens. Still the emergency child, the spare parts, the ghost in the basement that only 3 people in the entire world truly knew was real. That very afternoon, my mother returned, the ominous medical kit once again in her hand. More tests, more vials of blood. Just checking everything's working properly, she stated, her voice unnervingly casual. Can never be too prepared, you know. As she paused at the door, her hand already reaching for the keypad, she turned, her gaze chillingly direct. You know you're loved, right? She asked, her voice laced with a false sincerity that grated against my soul. We kept you. We could have given you away, but we kept you. That's love. The heavy door clicked shut behind her, the metallic sound resonating with finality. The red light on the new digital lock blinked, a constant, watchful eye. At that exact moment, watching that impersonal red light blink, a profound realization washed over me, crystallizing years of suppressed fear and anger. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I had a decision to make. To forge, not just any decision, but one that would irrevocably alter not only the solitary existence I knew, but also the vibrant futures of my 3 sisters. The stark clarity of this choice solidified in my mind with the cold, crystalline precision of ice crystallizing on a pane of glass. I could no longer afford the luxury of passively waiting for my sisters to miraculously rescue me. I understood, with a painful certainty, that I couldn't simply depend on fleeting wishes or the ephemeral tendrils of hope. If I truly desired to exist to be more than a hidden shadow, I had to seize that existence myself. I had to meticulously craft it into being. My meticulous journey began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Each time Mom or Dad descended into the sterile confines of my basement room for the obligatory medical tests, I transformed into an unblinking observer, silently cataloging their every movement, memorizing their exact routines. Dad, a creature of predictable habit, would invariably check his phone precisely 3 times during each visit, a mechanical ritual. Mom, equally consistent, hummed the same monotonous tune as she deftly drew my blood, her actions as rhythmic as a metronome. They were, I realized with a chilling certainty, predictable organisms, and predictability, I shrewdly deduced, could be meticulously exploited. The cold, unblinking eyes of the security cameras, those silent sentinels that watched my every breath, unexpectedly became my most invaluable teachers. I meticulously studied my parents through those grainy lenses, much like a detached scientist scrutinizing lab rats in a controlled experiment. Dad's departure for work was clocked at precisely 7:43 every single morning, his return at 6:17 in the evening. Mom religiously performed her grocery shopping on Tuesdays, and her book club meetings consumed her Thursday evenings. And, like clockwork, on the 15th of each month, coinciding with the arrival of bills, their hushed arguments about money would inevitably erupt. It was my sisters, during their fleeting nightly visits, who first perceived the quiet revolution stirring within me. Instead of finding me listless, they discovered a girl driven by a newfound, fierce determination, pushing through sets of push-ups, burning through sit-ups, relentlessly running in place on the cold concrete floor. I understood, with an unwavering resolve, that I needed to cultivate not just physical strength, but an inner resilience. I couldn't merely remain as passive spare parts. I had to evolve into someone capable of actively fighting back, someone with agency. One evening, Emma, with a conspiratorial gleam in her eyes, smuggled down a small, worn notebook, ingeniously concealed within the pages of her oversized math textbook. Together, nestled in the dim light, we painstakingly developed a rudimentary, yet vital, code. A single, soft tap on the cold metal pipes above us signified that Mom or Dad was awake and potentially moving around upstairs. 2 taps indicated an all clear, signaling a brief window of safety. 3 urgent taps meant emergency, a stark warning to freeze. That humble notebook swiftly transformed into our clandestine planning document, an unspoken dialogue passed surreptitiously back and forth beneath the locked door of my basement prison. From memory, and aided by the detailed angles captured by the omnipresent cameras, I meticulously sketched elaborate diagrams of the house, marking every potential exit point, identifying clever hiding spots, and delineating the precious, camera-blind zones where their electronic eyes simply couldn't penetrate. My sisters, in turn, diligently filled in the critical, tactile details gleaned from their world upstairs, which specific floorboards creaked underfoot, which windows could be opened with absolute silence, and, most crucially, the precise location where Dad kept his jangling set of keys. The first true crucible of our plan arrived at 10 3 weeks later. Olivia had a swim meet scheduled for Saturday, a rare occasion that demanded the presence of both parents. They would depart exactly at noon, returning by 4 p.m., for precious hours, 4 hours of audacious opportunity. For weeks, I had been diligently practicing the intricate art of picking the digital lock, utilizing an assortment of hairpins my sister had cunningly smuggled down to me. The mechanism, once its delicate logic was deciphered, proved to be surprisingly straightforward. That momentous morning, my breath hitched in my throat as I watched their departure unfold on the monitor screens, counting slowly to 300 to ensure they hadn't forgotten anything. To guarantee their complete absence, only then, with a surge of adrenaline, did I turn my attention to the forbidding lock. My hands, despite weeks of practice, trembled uncontrollably, a physical manifestation of the immense stakes, yet my muscle memory, honed by relentless repetition, instinctively took over. Click, click, the menacing red light on the panel flickered, then miraculously turned green. For the first time in 5 long, suffocating years, the heavy door swung open, completely devoid of any adult presence. The basement stairs loomed before me, an impossibly tall, daunting ascent. I began to climb them, each step slow and deliberate, my legs trembling not merely from the exertion, but from the sheer, overwhelming weight of the moment. The terrifying exhilaration of breaking free. At the very top, another door awaited. This one, to my relief, was thankfully unlocked. I pushed it open with a tentative hand and, for the first time in my memory, stepped into a kitchen I had only ever experienced through the distortions of a screen. Everything felt utterly alien, fundamentally wrong. The proportions of the counters seemed skewed, the colors vibrated with an intensity I hadn't imagined, and the symphony of smells real, tangible aroma salted my senses. This raw, unfiltered reality simply didn't align with the grainy, two-dimensional footage I had lived through, confined to my underground world. I reached out, my fingers tracing the cool, hard surface of the counter, then the humming refrigerator, then a sturdy wooden chair. Solid, real. Undeniable proof that I wasn't merely dreaming this impossible escape. A fervent desire to explore every nook and cranny of this forbidden world surged through me, but I was acutely aware that my time was agonizingly limited. I quickly located Dad's study, a sanctuary of his own secrets. There, I meticulously searched his desk, unearthing insurance papers, thick medical records, and detailed bank statements, mundane yet vital scaffolding of their lives. With an old digital camera Emma had sneakily passed down months prior, I photographed everything, evidence, unassailable proof that I existed. Then, in Mom's closet, tucked away on a shelf, I discovered a box innocently labeled Baby Memories. Inside, neatly arranged, were 3 hospital bracelets, 3 pristine birth certificates, 3 sets of tiny footprints all belonging to my triplets. Conspicuously absent was anything for a 4th child. My heart sank, a familiar ache of invisibility. But then, underneath it all, carefully wrapped in a delicate layer of tissue paper, I found it, a 4th hospital bracelet. Baby girl D, the same date, the same time plus 3 minutes. The world tilted. I existed. I had the undeniable, irrefutable proof. Suddenly, the deep rumble of the garage door shook the very foundation of the house. They were home, early, a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated panic flooded my system, seizing control. I sprinted, taking the basement stairs 3 at a time, my lungs burning, heart hammering against my ribs. I slammed the heavy basement door shut behind me with a resounding thud. The digital lock clicked into place, a sound of terrifying finality, just as I heard Mom's familiar voice drift from the kitchen, a stark reminder of how close I had come. My heart continued its frantic rhythm as I watched them on the monitors, a clandestine observer of their oblivious routine. They moved through their kitchen rituals, completely unaware of the harrowing near miss that had just transpired, but Olivia knew. During dinner that night, her eyes kept darting nervously toward the basement door, a subtle, silent communication. Later, under the cover of darkness, she slipped a crumpled note under my door. They came home because Emma called them. It read, said she felt sick. We bought you time. My sisters, in their nascent defiance, had orchestrated a crucial distraction. They were, I realized with a mix of awe and terror, slowly but surely transforming into seasoned conspirators. Over the ensuing weeks, our intricate system of rebellion was refined with the precision of a master clockmaker. Lily began attending art classes on Saturdays, each session providing us with yet another precious window of opportunity. Emma, ever the intellectual, joined the debate club after school, extending her time away from the watchful eyes of our parents. Olivia, embracing her compassionate side, took up volunteering at the local hospital. Each newfound activity, each moment away from the oppressive confines of our home, translated directly into invaluable opportunities for me to practice existing, to move, to learn, to breathe freely. However briefly, I meticulously learned how to reset the digital lock from the inside, a crucial skill, and how to navigate the sprawling house like a phantom, leaving not a single trace of my presence. I memorized the precise placement of every object, the exact tilt of every cushion on the sofa. I became a ghost, one who could glide through walls and rooms without disturbing even the slightest speck of dust, an invisible resident. But Mom, ever vigilant, began to grow suspicious. Her visits to my basement room became erratic, unpredictable, devoid of the old routine. She would descend at random intervals, checking my vitals with an unsettling intensity, asking profoundly unsettling questions. Do you ever think about leaving? She probed one day, her voice unnervingly soft, as she meticulously checked my blood pressure. Do you truly understand why you're so special? I maintained a carefully blank expression, delivering the pre-programmed answers she so desperately wanted to hear. I'm safe here, Mom. I'm the emergency one. I understand my purpose. She offered a thin, practiced smile, yet her eyes, I noted with a chilling certainty, remained deeply troubled, betraying a gnawing anxiety. That very night, I observed her installing a sleek, new camera in my room. I feigned ignorance, pretending not to notice its cold, clinical gaze, but I had already seen where she cleverly hid the monitor tucked away in a secret compartment within her bedroom closet. The surveillance intensified. Meanwhile, my sisters, emboldened by our small victories, grew increasingly audacious in their rebellion. They began speaking loudly, deliberately, about their imaginary sister at school, weaving her so vividly into their conversations that even their teachers, at first dismissive, eventually stopped correcting them. They meticulously drew pictures featuring 4 vibrant girls, not 3, and crafted imaginative stories about quadruplets, making my impossible existence undeniably present. Forcing it into the light, the school counselor, a woman clearly overwhelmed, called for yet another meeting. This time, all 3 of my sisters attended. They sat upright in those unforgiving plastic chairs, and with quiet, unwavering conviction, they recounted the same extraordinary, chilling story, a sister hidden away in the basement. Parents who lived a web of lies. A girl whose very existence was predicated on her being nothing more than a collection of spare parts. The counselor's official report, with its clinical detachment, labeled their unified testimony as shared delusion and trauma bonding, recommending immediate family therapy. My parents, predictably, declined the suggestion. "We'll handle it at home," they coldly stated. And their handling came swiftly, brutally, in the form of separation. Lily, the youngest, was immediately moved to the guest, confined within my solitary room. Emma and Olivia, my sisters, were explicitly forbidden from spending any time together unsupervised, a draconian edict enforced by our parents in a clear, cold strategy of divide and conquer. They truly believed that by segmenting our lives, by creating physical and emotional distance, they could control us, could weaken any potential alliance. But what they crucially underestimated was the profound, almost primal bond that connected identical souls like ours. We were not merely siblings, we were echoes of one another, intrinsically linked in ways they couldn't possibly comprehend. Consequently, we adapted. Our methods of communication, once simple whispered exchanges or furtive glances, became increasingly elaborate, a sophisticated ballet of clandestine messages. We developed a silent language, a web of meaning woven into the mundane fabric of our daily lives. Notes, no longer mere scraps of paper, became intricate, layered, hidden in increasingly creative, even artistic, places. Lily, with her prodigious talent, transformed her artwork into a clandestine canvas, embedding subtle messages within the vibrant strokes and layered compositions that only our discerning eyes could decipher. Emma, ever the pragmatist, encoded detailed plans and crucial information within the ostensibly innocuous figures and solutions of her math homework, a secret cipher known only to us. Olivia, whose compassionate spirit led her to volunteer at the local hospital, leveraged her access to a wealth of resources, meticulously researching organ donation laws, patient rights, and the complex legal landscape surrounding medical procedures. She would surreptitiously print out reams of information, often late at night on a library computer, then cunningly smuggle the documents past our watchful parents. I, in turn, consumed every single document she brought, my hunger for knowledge insatiable. I devoured the legal jargon, the medical terminology, the intricate details of regulations that govern human bodies and choices. I learned about the sacrosanct principle of consent, about the fundamental right to bodily autonomy, about a myriad of rights that, by all societal standards, one supposedly possessed but in reality was systematically denied. This knowledge, meticulously acquired and deeply understood, transformed itself within me. It became not just information, but another potent form of strength, an invaluable weapon, another sharp, gleaming tool added to my rapidly growing arsenal. It was the armor I wore in my solitary confinement, the quiet rebellion of a mind refusing to be subjugated. From my isolated vantage point, the cameras, my constant, unwelcome companions, showed me everything. They were my windows into a world I was forbidden to touch, yet intimately connected to. I witnessed, through their unblinking digital eyes, the slow, agonizing struggle of Dad's business, its foundations crumbling, its once spread structure now teetering precariously on the brink of collapse. I saw, with chilling clarity, how Mom's ostensibly genteel book club was, in fact, a euphemism for a boisterous, increasingly frequent wine club, where the clinking of glasses and the slurred laughter echoed long into the night. Their arguments, once sporadic and hushed, grew in frequency and ferocity, their voices sharp and brittle, cutting through the thin veneer of domestic tranquility. The more they drank, the more they fought, and paradoxically, the more intensely they checked on me, their suspicion and paranoia a tangible presence, even through the lens of the camera. The pressure, both external and internal, was building in the house, a palpable, suffocating force, much like steam relentlessly accumulating within a sealed pot, threatening to burst its confines with devastating force. Then, the unthinkable happened. Emma got sick. And I don't mean a simple, easily mended broken arm kind of sick. This was really sick, a profound and terrifying affliction that gripped her fragile young body. A fever, relentless and unyielding, refused to break despite every intervention. Her joints, once lithe and agile, swelled alarmingly, distending like grotesque balloons, rendering her immobile with pain. The monitors in my room, usually silent witnesses to the uneventful routine of the house, suddenly blared to life, showing the horrifying tableau of my parents rushing her to the hospital in the dead of night, at precisely 3 o'clock in the morning. I pressed my face so hard against the cold, unforgiving screen, my breath fogging the glass, desperately trying to penetrate the grainy pixels, to somehow reach through the digital barrier and touch my sister's pain, to share her suffering, to be there with her. The basement door, usually a sealed fortress, creaked open ominously at dawn, casting long, unsettling shadows. My parents stood there, a picture of disheveled desperation, both still wearing the clothes from the previous day, a testament to the frantic night they had endured. Dad, his face drawn and pale, clutched the heavy medical kit, its contents a silent, terrifying promise of what was to come. Mom, her eyes red-rimmed and distant, held a sheaf of consent forms, their crisp white edges dark against the somber morning light. Just a precaution, she murmured, her voice thin and reedy, trying to inject a false sense of calm into the charged atmosphere, just in case. You understand, don't you? She's your sister. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken expectations, with a chilling undercurrent of manipulation. I understood perfectly, in that agonizing moment, every fragmented memory, every veiled hint, every dismissive glance, every rationed meal coalesced into a horrifying, crystal-clear realization. I understood, with a profound and crushing clarity, that my very existence, my entire 13 years on this earth, had only ever been about this singular, pivotal moment. This wasn't a choice. It was an ultimatum. It was the stark, brutal reality of giving up pieces of myself, submitting to their demands, or standing by, helpless, as Emma, my sister, suffered agonizingly, perhaps even fatally. I was nothing more than spare parts, fulfilling my preordained, macabre purpose. They took more blood than ever before, the needle plunging deep, the crimson flow seemingly endless. They brought in unfamiliar machines, rented for the occasion, their cold, metallic hum filling the basement with a sterile dread. They ran battery after battery of tests, meticulously checking compatibility markers, analyzing tissue types, scrutinizing antibody levels, searching for the perfect match. For the optimal spare part, and I, trapped in my cage of isolation, submitted to it all. I played the role of the compliant ghost, my body numbly acquiescing while my mind, a frantic tempest of fear and fury, raced, planning, strategizing, refusing to break. Irony, however, is a cruel mistress. Emma's devastating illness, initially suspected to be something requiring a transplant, turned out to be autoimmune treatable with medication, not life-altering organ removal. A wave of relief, fleeting and fragile, washed over me, only to be immediately replaced by a fresh surge of dread. For despite the diagnosis, despite the clear path to recovery, the testing continued. Better safe than sorry, Mom declared, her voice devoid of genuine concern, simply reiterating the chilling mantra. Better to be prepared. Prepared for what? The unspoken question hung in the air, a sword dangling above my head, a constant, nagging threat to my already precarious existence. My sister's anger, once a simmering resentment, now transformed into something far harder, far sharper, a honed weapon of defiance. The realization of what our parents were truly capable of the lengths they were willing to go, solidified their resolve. They stopped wasting their precious energy trying to convince adults who clearly wouldn't listen, whose minds were warped by desperation and self-interest. Instead, they began planning for war. We had a mere 6 months until our 14th birthday. A rapidly shrinking window of opportunity, 6 months to turn abstract wishes and desperate hopes into concrete reality. The urgency of their escape plans intensified dramatically after Emma's terrifying illness, spurred by the chilling revelation of my designated role. My sisters, now imbued with a renewed sense of purpose, smuggled down more supplies through increasingly ingenious and audacious methods. Lily, with her artistic eye for detail, ingeniously concealed miniature lockpicks within the seemingly innocuous tubes of paint in her art kit. Emma, ever the stealthy intellectual, tucked slender wire cutters, essential for disabling certain locks, between the heavy pages of her textbooks, the sharp edges hidden from plain sight. Olivia, utilizing her privileged access from hospital volunteering, brought down a steady stream of medical supplies, rolls of bandages, antiseptic solutions, and vital first aid essentials, all cunningly hidden within the reinforced lining of her backpack, escaping detection. Meanwhile, I, confined to the cramped quarters below, practiced my escape route with meticulous precision. The ventilation system, a labyrinthine network of metal ducts, became my clandestine highway to freedom. The ducts were incredibly narrow, their metallic confines barely accommodating my slender frame, a physical testament to years of limited food and restricted growth that, ironically, now served as an advantage. I meticulously mapped every turn, every junction, every hidden passage, painstakingly timing how long it took to reach different rooms, creating a mental blueprint of the entire house's underbelly. My fingernails, raw and bleeding, broke against stubborn screws as I painstakingly learned the delicate, silent art of removing grates without a single discernible sound, honing my skills under the shroud of darkness and silence. During one particularly daring practice run, I managed to navigate the tortuous path all the way to the living room vent. Through the narrow slats, a tiny window into the forbidden world above, I observed my parents engaged in another heated argument. Dad, his face contorted with frustration, waved a stack of stark bank statements, their figures undoubtedly painting a grim financial picture, while Mom, with a practiced, almost desperate grace, poured yet another glass of wine, seeking solace in its intoxicating oblivion. Their voices, usually muffled, carried with unnerving clarity through the resonant metal of the ducts, amplifying their desperation. The financial situation, I quickly realized, was far, far worse than I had ever imagined, exceeding even my darkest projections. Dad's business, already floundering, had recently lost 3 major contracts, significant blows that threatened to shatter its very foundation. And Mom's spending habits, stubbornly resistant to reality, had evidently not adjusted to their precipitous decline. I heard them discussing, in hushed yet urgent tones, the terrifying prospect of selling the house, of downsizing their lives, of drastically cutting expenses. Yet, amidst all this frantic deliberation, neither of them, not once, ever mentioned their 4th daughter, the invisible child, eating meager scraps in the dimly lit basement. A chilling testament to my utter insignificance in their lives. With a suffocating feeling of invisibility and neglect, I slowly crawled backward through the dusty ducts, the particulate matter coating my throat, making each breath a gritty effort. Back in the relative sanctuary of my room, I diligently documented everything I had witnessed, every whispered word, every worried gesture. Knowledge, I reaffirmed, was not merely power, it was ammunition, potent and precise. Their desperation, while making them incredibly dangerous and unpredictable, also rendered them profoundly vulnerable, creating cracks in their seemingly impenetrable facade that we could exploit. Even the physical separation imposed by our parents, a literal and metaphorical wall, could not sever the intricate threads of our communication. We simply developed new, more sophisticated methods, adapting with an ingenuity born of necessity. Lily, with her artistic flair, painted intricate messages in her artwork, employing specific, coded color combinations and subtle brushstrokes that only our trained eyes could understand. A visual cipher of hope and instruction. Emma, brilliant and analytical, created complex math problems whose seemingly innocent answers, when decoded, spelled out critical words and phrases, a numerical language of defiance. Olivia, dedicated to her cause, left medical textbooks open to specific pages, with passages about patient rights, informed consent, and the fundamental principle of bodily autonomy meticulously highlighted, a silent yet powerful discourse on freedom. But as our planning intensified, so too did Mom's paranoia. Her suspicion, and not just my asthma, escalated dramatically. She installed advanced motion sensors in the hallway leading to the basement, their silent sentinels designed to detect even the slightest movement. The new cameras, menacing black eyes peering from every corner, boasted night vision and infrared capabilities, technological advancements I hadn't seen before, making my surveillance even more comprehensive, more oppressive. She began meticulously marking the food levels in my meager rations, weighing portions before bringing them down, a chilling indicator of her desperate need for control, her escalating distrust. Then, one evening, she arrived with the familiar medical kit, but her expression was profoundly different. Gone was the routine, almost bored detachment. Her eyes, usually veiled, now held a strange, calculating intensity. Something had undeniably changed. She drew blood, the sterile process now imbued with a new, unsettling purpose, all while studying my face with an unnerving scrutiny, comparing it to something on her phone. Photos of my sisters, I realized with a jolt of recognition, looking for differences, for anomalies, for anything that might set me apart. After she finally left, the silence in the basement felt heavier, more pregnant with meaning. I examined my reflection in the polished metal of the food tray, a distorted, unflattering mirror. 13 years of subterranean existence had undeniably left its mark, carving an indelible truth onto my very being. My skin was noticeably paler than my sister's, an almost translucent quality born of perpetual shadow. My hair, crudely cut with smuggled scissors, hung unevenly, a jagged testament to my hidden life. My eyes, once bright with childish innocence, now possessed a hollow, haunted quality that theirs, thankfully, lacked. In that harsh, metallic reflection, I saw not a reflection, but a grim reality. I looked like their ghost, a spectral echo of the lives they lived above. The next escape attempt, born of this chilling realization and escalating pressure, came sooner than we had initially planned. Dad announced an unexpected business trip, a window of opportunity too tempting to ignore. He would be flying out Thursday morning, returning Sunday night. To further solidify our chances, Mom had committed to helping with the school fundraiser all day Saturday, guaranteeing her absence for a substantial block of time. Another perfect window of opportunity had unexpectedly opened. I spent the entire week preparing with an almost obsessive focus, pushing my body and mind to their limits. I strengthened my fingers with rigorous exercises, building the dexterity and endurance needed for the delicate task ahead. I practiced the intricate lock mechanism on my door endlessly, until I could open it silently in under 30 seconds, a triumph of precision and persistence. I meticulously studied the motion sensor patterns, those invisible tripwires that guarded my prison, patterns my sisters had painstakingly documented and communicated to me. Thursday arrived, crisp and cold, a day pregnant with anticipation. Dad left for the airport at dawn, his silhouette framed by the first slivers of morning light. I watched him through the camera feed, a silent, invisible observer, as he loaded his suitcase into the waiting taxi, gave Mom a perfunctory kiss goodbye, and offered a dismissive wave to my sisters, who sat at the breakfast table, maintaining their flawless facade of normalcy. The taxi pulled away from the driveway, a symbol of fleeting freedom, at precisely 5:47 a.m. Mom, ever the creature of habit, followed her morning routine with unwavering precision. Breakfast for the triplets, the clatter of cutlery and muffled chatter reaching me through the vents. The short drive to school, the distant hum of the car, her inevitable return home, and finally, the dreaded check-on-me ritual. She brought down my meager oatmeal, its plainness of familiar comfort, and immediately launched into the morning tests, blood pressure, temperature, reflexes. I submitted passively, a silent, unresisting presence, while my mind, a clandestine mapmaker, meticulously memorized the exact positions of the new sensors she had installed, cataloging their blind spots and vulnerabilities. Friday passed with agonizing slowness, each minute stretching into an eternity. I exercised, planned, waited, my every thought consumed by the impending escape. My sisters, meanwhile, attended school, participated in their usual array of activities, and maintained their carefully constructed normal facades. Their smiles and laughter a convincing performance for the outside world. Through the grainy lens of the cameras, I watched them perform their lives, a silent, apathetic audience, knowing that beneath their composed exteriors, they too were counting down the hours, the minutes, until Saturday. Saturday morning dawned, bright and expectant. Mom prepared for the school fundraiser with an almost theatrical flourish. She wore her best dress, a vibrant splash of color, and styled her hair with meticulous care, every strand perfectly in place. The sheer effort seemed excessive, even for a school event, hinting at an underlying desperation, a need to project an image of effortless perfection. Through the ever-present speakers, I overheard her on the phone, confirming meeting times, discussing booth assignments, orchestrating the details of her public performance. She would be gone from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., a vast, liberating expanse of time. Before finally leaving, she made her customary visit to my room. She brought a larger breakfast than usual, a subtle guilt offering, a desperate attempt to assuage her conscience. She performed her abbreviated tests, a perfunctory charade, then leaned in, her voice tinged with a hollow sweetness, and reminded me to be good, to stay quiet, to remember I was loved. The words, devoid of genuine warmth, felt like an icy shroud. The basement door then locked with its familiar, electronic beep, a final, definitive seal on my prison. I waited. I watched her car disappear from the driveway camera, a fleeting glimpse of freedom driving away. I counted, slowly and deliberately, to 500, a mental timer marking the safe passage of time, ensuring her complete absence. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, I began. The lock, meticulously practiced, yielded quickly, almost silently, to my practiced fingers. The door swung. The hinges, which I had cunningly convinced Mom required oiling, allowed the door to open with an almost imperceptible whisper, a silent betrayal of the house's usual creaks. Above, the motion sensors, designed with adult heights in mind, were positioned far too high to detect my diminutive form, offering a crucial, if temporary, blind spot in our meticulously monitored home. I scuttled low, a shadow hugging the floor, crawling beneath the kitchen's expansive range, pressing myself so tightly against the cool, unforgiving walls that I could feel their rough texture against my cheek. The kitchen, usually a place of sterile, controlled order, now appeared strikingly alien in the unfiltered embrace of daylight. Bright, untamed sunlight streamed relentlessly through the window's vast, luminous panes I had, until now, only ever observed as dark, distant rectangles flickering across the cold, impersonal glow of security monitors. Oh, how I yearned to simply stand in that golden cascade, to feel the genuine warmth bloom across my skin, a sensation utterly alien to my confined existence. But such indulgence was a luxury I could not afford. Time, above all else, was a commodity more precious than gold. My desperate search led me to Mom's purse, casually abandoned, hanging precariously from a kitchen chair. Inside her wallet, a repository of her visible life, yielded 3 perfectly posed school pictures of my sisters, their uniform smiles, their identical grades, and nothing, absolutely nothing, else. Her phone, of course, was locked, an impenetrable digital fortress demanding a passcode I tragically did not possess. Yet a hopeful, metallic jingle emanated from a small hut nearby, revealing her car keys, an unexpected beacon of possibility. The garage, a cavernous space usually forbidden, beckoned with new, tantalizing prospects. It was a veritable wonderland of potential escape. Tools, meticulously arranged yet offering a chaotic promise of freedom, hung from headboards. A sturdy ladder, leaning confidently against the far wall, seemed to whisper of upward mobility. Shelves groaned under the weight of meticulously labeled boxes, Christmas decorations, old clothes, mundane artifacts of a perfectly normal family life. But then, tucked away in one unassuming box, I found them, baby clothes. Not just one, but 4 identical outfits, tiny, soft, perfectly preserved. A chilling realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. She'd saved them all. Every single one, a silent, damning testament to my existence. Suddenly, a car door slammed outside, a percussive shockwave that reverberated through the very core of my being, instantly stopping my heart. Through the smudged garage window, I watched in disbelief as Lily, my youngest sister, clambered out of a neighbor's minivan. A cold wave of dread washed over me. She was supposed to be at art class, her designated activity. Why was she home? What unforeseen complication had brought her back so unexpectedly? Panic, a cold, clawing beast, propelled me back through the house, my body instinctively staying low, a furtive shadow flitting across the sunlit floors. As I darted beneath them, the motion sensors, those silent sentinels, blinked with an unnerving, knowing red flash, acknowledging my forbidden passage. The basement door, my supposed sanctuary, still stood ajar. I lunged for it, pulling it shut with a desperate urgency just as the faint click of the front door announcing Lily's return echoed overhead. But the lock, a cruel, mocking barrier, would not engage from the inside without the secret code I lacked. Its red light pulsed tauntingly, a beacon of my failure. Oh, the bitter irony. I had spent countless hours meticulously practicing opening it, not a single moment on the mechanics of closing and securing it. The door remained obstinately unlocked, a blatant, screaming testament to my escape. Footsteps, light and familiar, crossed directly overhead Lily's distinctive, youthful rhythm. I tracked her progress, first to her room, then the brief pause in the bathroom, before her deliberate trajectory shifted, heading unmistakably toward the kitchen, toward the very door I had just failed to secure. I held my breath, a suffocating weight in my chest, my body rigid with apprehension. The footsteps paused directly outside. Through the almost invisible crack beneath the door, I could discern the faint, elongated silhouette of her shadow. The handle, a harbinger of discovery, turned ever so slightly, then mercifully, miraculously stopped. 3 soft, deliberate taps echoed on the wood door emergency signal, a silent, desperate plea for communication. I tapped back once, a single, coded response, danger. Her shadow, understanding the unspoken warning, moved away, receding from the crack. From the kitchen, I heard the sudden cacophony of carefully orchestrated noise, cabinets opening and slamming with exaggerated force, dishes clattering and scraping. A deliberate symphony of domestic activity designed to create a convincing alibi. Then her footsteps returned, a soft rustle outside the door. Something slid gently under the crack of folded piece of paper. I snatched it up, my fingers trembling as I unfolded the urgent scrawl, "Mom forgot fundraiser cash. Coming back. Hide." A fresh wave of icy panic, more potent than before, flooded my entire system, a tidal surge threatening to drown me. Clutching the crumpled note, I flew down the basement stairs, my feet barely touching the treads. My room, usually a haven, now looked deceptively normal, yet the unlocked door, a gaping maw, screamed the evidence of my recent escape. Think, my mind raced, desperate for a solution. The ventilation grate, a familiar friend from my clandestine practice sessions, hung precariously loose. With a desperate yank, I tore it fully open and squeezed, contorting myself into the narrow, suffocating tunnel, pulling the grate closed behind me with a final, rasping scrape. The unforgiving metal edges bit into my shoulders, protesting as I forced myself deeper, further, into the inky blackness of the ductwork. Mom's car, a sleek, dark Predator, pulled into the driveway precisely 2 minutes later. Her heels, sharp and unyielding, clicked a relentless rhythm across the kitchen floor, a sound that seemed to amplify in the confined space of the duct. They stopped, chillingly, at the basement door. Through the narrow vent, I watched, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, as the handle turned. She entered my room, her eyes sweeping the space. Her face, usually a mask of control, went utterly pale. She spun, a whirlwind of frantic motion, checking every corner, peering under the mattress. Then, with a sudden, desperate surge, she ran back upstairs. I heard her footsteps, a frantic crescendo, racing through the house, doors slamming with violent finality, her voice raw with panic, calling my sister's names. She returned to the basement, clutching her phone, its screen a small, glowing rectangle in the dim light, and immediately called Dad. A mordant, bitter humor surfaced amidst my terror. Mom's detective skills certainly needed an upgrade if she was only just now connecting the dots. Realizing that the baby clothes for children perfectly matched the imaginary sister her daughters had been so innocently mentioning at school. A pretty substantial clue. Wouldn't you say? Her words came in fractured, desperate gasp. The lock, she's gone. How did she find her? Then, her gaze, sharp and piercing, settled on my hiding place. She noticed the ventilation grate, slightly crooked, not quite flush with the wall. Her eyes, narrowed with a terrifying focus, tracked the entire expanse of the ductwork, following its metallic path across the ceiling. Without a word, she grabbed a nearby chair, climbed onto it, and pressed her face, a mask of grim determination, against the grate. Through the cold, unyielding metal slats, our eyes met. Time, that relentless tyrant, simply froze. Neither of us moved, held captive in that silent, terrifying tableau. Then, a slow, chilling smile spread across Mom's face. It wasn't her usual, practiced, saccharine smile, the one she used for school plays or parent-teacher conferences. This was something altogether colder, a predator's grin. She left the chair precisely where it stood and ascended the stairs. A moment later, the distinct, ominous rattling of tools echoed from the garage. She returned, her silhouette framed by the doorway, holding a drill and a handful of gleaming metal brackets. Methodically, with a terrifying calm, she began her work. Each grate in the basement, a potential escape route, was systematically secured. The drill word, precise and relentless, as she affixed brackets over every opening, sealing my fate, trapping me deeper within the very walls of my home. Hours bled into an agonizing eternity within that metal tomb. My shoulders screamed, cramped into an unnatural, torturous position. My breathing grew shallow, each inhalation a struggle against the encroaching dust that coated my throat. Through infinitesimal gaps in the metal, I watched Mom work, her chillingly serene figure moving with purposeful grace. As she drilled, she hummed a soft, unsettling tune, the very same melody she had hummed during my blood draws. A melody now forever etched into my memory as the soundtrack of terror. When her grim task was complete, she stood perfectly still in the center of my room, gazing up at the ceiling. Her voice, strangely clear and resonant, carried effortlessly through the network of ducts, reaching me in my suffocating prison. She explained, with chilling composure, how she had always known this day would inevitably arrive, how she had meticulously prepared for it. The brackets, she assured me, were merely temporary, a stopgap measure until Dad returned home. Then, together, they would extract me properly, safely, without damage to the merchandise. The dehumanizing term, spoken with such casual ease, sent a fresh shiver of horror down my spine. As a final, perverse gesture, she placed water bottles and energy bars on my mattress, a twisted offering. A gesture of kindness, she called it proof of love. Then, she went upstairs to wait. Through the echoing pathways of the ducts, I heard my visible sisters return from their respective activities. Their voices, light and carefree, drifted down to me, normal conversations, ordinary laughter, utterly devoid of any hint of the profound drama unfolding beneath their very feet. Mom, ever the picture of maternal perfection, served dinner, patiently helped with homework, and tucked them into bed, a flawless performance for her unsuspecting children. Night fell, bringing with it a deep, pervasive chill that permeated the metal of my tomb. My body screamed, every muscle protesting the contorted, confined position, but I suppressed the agony. I waited, I listened, I planned. Around midnight, a soft, almost imperceptible scratching sound emanated from directly above me. Metal on metal, a faint click, then a groan. One of the brackets miraculously loosened. The grate, my window to the world, lifted slightly. Olivia's face, streaked with silent tears, appeared in the opening, her eyes wide with fear and desperate hope. She reached down, her hand a lifeline, and with a surge of strength I didn't know I possessed, pulled me up through the narrow opening into the dimly lit laundry room. My legs, atrophied and stiff from hours of immobility, buckled beneath me. 1,000 pins and needles, sharp as tiny knives, shot through every limb. Olivia, a steadfast anchor, held me upright, guiding my faltering steps toward the bathroom. In the mirror, a spectral reflection stared back at me. Dust-covered, streaked with grime, bleeding from small, raw cuts etched by the unforgiving metal edges. I looked more ghost than girl, a phantom manifested. Olivia, her voice an urgent, barely audible whisper, helped me clean up. Emma, she explained, was meticulously keeping watch. Lily, ever resourceful, had created an ingenious distraction earlier, feigning a sudden illness to ensure Mom's attention was diverted to her, rather than to the basement. They had meticulously stolen tools from the garage, working in desperate, furtive shifts to free me. But the escape was far from over. We couldn't leave. Mom, in her chilling foresight, had activated the security system. All doors and windows were now armed, an impenetrable perimeter. The code, of course, had been changed. We were all trapped, prisoners within our own home, until the unforgiving dawn. Olivia led me to their room, a sanctuary of shared sisterhood. Emma and Lily waited, their young faces pale, etched with a potent mixture of fear and unwavering determination. We huddled together, for identical girls, finally reunited, planning in hushed, urgent whispers. They revealed their meager but precious cash, money painstakingly saved from allowances, a small backpack filled with essential supplies, and, most importantly, crumpled notes-bearing phone numbers for emergency services. The plan was terrifying in its simplicity, desperate in its audacity. When Mom opened the front door in the morning, we would run. All four of us, together, a united front. We would race to the neighbor's house, call for help, and finally, irrevocably, prove I existed. But plans, rarely, if ever, do the carefully crafted illusions of a family's secret life survive their first visceral encounter with the stark, unyielding light of reality. For me, that shattering moment arrived not with the gentle awakening of dawn, but in the oppressive stillness of 3 a.m. My mother, it seemed, couldn't even wait for the sun to rise. The soft click, then the slow, deliberate creak of the bedroom door slicing through the pre-dawn quiet was my first harbinger of what was to come. She materialized in the doorway, a menacing silhouette etched against the anemic glow of the hall light. In her hand, clutched with a chilling proprietary grip, was the ubiquitous medical kit, a familiar, foreboding symbol that always heralded pain and unwanted procedures. Her eyes, sharp and unerring, sliced through the gloom, bypassing my identical sisters nestled in their beds, and impaled me with a gaze that promised an immediate reckoning. She didn't utter a single word, didn't need to. Her silence was a thunderclap, the message reverberating through the room with crystal clarity. Come willingly, little one, or bear witness as your sisters endure the repercussions of your disobedience. It was an ultimatum I understood intimately, one forged from years of unspoken threats and thinly veiled cruelty. As the chilling implication settled, I instinctively began to push myself up, a reflex honed by fear. But then, a flicker of defiance ignited. Before I could fully stand, Emma's hand shot out, a firm, resolute grasp around my arm, anchoring me. Simultaneously, Lily positioned herself, a living barricade, squarely in my path, her slender form a surprising bulwark. And then, the most startling act, Olivia, with a quiet determination that belied her usual weakness, stepped directly between me and our mother. 3 identical faces, usually a mirror of each other in their quiet compliance, were now united, sculpted by an unwavering resolve I had never witnessed before. What was Mom thinking in that instant, her carefully composed mask cracked? Surprise flared first, a fleeting tremor, quickly eclipsed by a surge of raw anger, her features tightening. But beneath it all, barely suppressed, was something akin to fear, a stark, chilling realization that painted itself across her face. She hadn't anticipated such a unified front, such a collective spirit of rebellion. One disobedient daughter, certainly, was a nuisance, easily managed, easily brought back into line. But four was an insurgency, 4 was a full-blown crisis, threatening to tear apart the very fabric of her meticulously constructed world. She attempted to salvage the situation, her voice a low, urgent murmur, laced with the manipulative veneer of concern. She tried reasoning, explaining, her words a familiar tapestry woven with threads of family loyalty, of sacrifices for the greater good, and the ever-present insidious lie that love sometimes demands difficult choices. Her words hung heavy in the air, hollow and without purchase. My sisters remained unmoved, unyielding. They offered no response, no flicker of acknowledgement, simply standing as an impenetrable wall between me and our mother. The standoff stretched, each silent second amplifying the tension, a taut wire humming with unspoken defiance. Then, a sudden, jarring vibration. Mom's phone buzzed insistently in her pocket, a jarring intrusion from the outside world. It was Dad, a text message from his distant hotel. Her gaze flickered, a moment of fleeting distraction, a crack in her formidable facade. In that infinitesimal window, that breath of a moment, Emma moved. She lunged, a blur of motion, her target the medical kit still clutched in Mom's hand. The kid flew, a cascade of plastic vials, bandages, and needles scattering across the polished floor, a silent testament to the abrupt eruption of chaos. Pandemonium ensued. Mom, her composure shattered, lunged for Emma, her movements frantic. But Lily was already there, a force of nature, pushing her back with surprising strength. Meanwhile, Olivia, ever pragmatic, seized my arm, tugging me urgently toward the bedroom window. The piercing shriek of the security alarm ripped through the quiet night as she, without a moment's hesitation, smashed the glass with a heavy bedside lamp. Shards rained down, glittering like malevolent stars, as the shrill wail echoed, a siren song of freedom and impending trouble. Outside, a symphony of flashing lights began to strobe against the darkness, the alarm company's automatic response, a mechanical cavalry arriving at our domestic battleground. Neighbors' windows, one by one, flickered to life, concerned faces appearing in the glow. Dogs, roused from their sleep, began to bark, their cries adding to the cacophony. The outside world, so carefully excluded for so long, was suddenly, violently intruding upon our meticulously guarded family secret. Mom froze, caught in the headlights of this unexpected exposure. Her mind, I could almost see, whirred, calculating. The alarm, inevitably, would bring questions, police investigations. For identical girls, one a ghost utterly without documentation. Her entire, painstakingly constructed life, her careful edifice of deceit, was crumbling before her eyes, like a sandcastle washed away by an unforgiving tide. She made her choice, a desperate, strategic retreat. She sprinted to the security panel, her fingers flying across the keypad, entering the code that would silence the piercing alarm. The sudden quiet was almost more jarring than the wail itself. She turned, her gaze snapping back to the window, only to find us, already half climbing, half falling through the jagged opening, into the cool night air. What ensued was not a conventional chase, no desperate pursuit across the lawn. Instead, it was a silent, desperate negotiation through action. Mom, her voice a rapid-fire torrent of words, was frantically trying to reassert control, to pull us back into the suffocating comfort of her lies. We, on the other hand, with every step, every defiant gesture, were unequivocally refusing to comply. The balance of power, a precarious thing in our family, was shifting dramatically with each move, each unspoken challenge. We spilled out into the backyard, a chaotic tumble of limbs and determination. Mom followed, still talking, her words a frantic stream about misunderstandings, about fixing everything, about the urgent need to be a family again. Her pleas, however, fell on deaf ears. Our resolve was too hardened, our ears too accustomed to the hollow ring of her promises. Then, the sudden, intrusive glow of motion-activated lights illuminated the yard. Mr. Dunn, our quiet, observant neighbor, stepped onto his porch, a shadow of concern etched on his face, drawn out by the escalating commotion. Mom, ever the actress, plastered on a brittle, disarming smile, waved with practiced nonchalance, and called out, her voice a strained performance, that everything was perfectly fine. Just a small accident, so sorry for the noise. But how does one explain a way for identical girls, standing barefoot in a suburban yard at 3 a.m., especially when one of them, myself, was visibly dusty, bleeding from fresh cuts, and wore the unmistakable appearance of someone who had spent years literally living within the walls of their home? Mr. Dunn's initial concern visibly curdled into suspicion, his eyes narrowing, his gaze lingering on my disheveled form. Mom saw it too, the dawning realization in his eyes that her fragile narrative was rapidly unraveling. In one last, desperate attempt to reclaim control, she reached for me, her hand outstretched, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper of reassurance. Everything will be okay, she promised, if you just come inside. If we all just come inside. My sisters, however, moved with an instinctual grace, forming an impenetrable human wall around me. It wasn't an aggressive barrier, but one of absolute, resolute protection. Mom's outstretched hand, finding no purchase, slowly, finally, fell uselessly to her side. The moment stretched, suspended in the cool night air, pregnant with unspoken consequences. A family, teetering precariously on the precipice of irrevocable change, held its breath. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of her defeat, or perhaps a glimmer of cunning strategy I couldn't yet discern, Mom simply turned and walked back into the silent, shattered house. We spent the remaining hours of that tumultuous night in the quiet, unexpected sanctuary of Mr. Dunn's home. He asked no questions, offered no judgment, simply provided a comforting haven of warm blankets and sweet hot chocolate, while his kind wife, her hands gentle and solicitous, fussed over my minor injuries. My sisters, ever vigilant, took turns catnapping and watching the window that faced our neighboring house, ensuring our precarious freedom. Dawn, that usually heralds a new beginning, brought instead Dad's abrupt, early return. His rental car screeched into the driveway at precisely 6 a.m., its tires protesting loudly against the gravel. Mom, I knew, must have called him, her desperation surely palpable even over the phone, through the frosted glass of Mr. Dunn's window. We watched a furious, whispered argument unfold on our front lawn. Dad's gestures were sharp, angry, punctuated by furious jabs of his hands. Mom's responses, in stark contrast, appeared pleading, her shoulders hunched in a posture of desperate supplication. Then his eyes, still burning with indignation, suddenly met ours across the lawn. His face cycled through a series of rapid transformations, initial shock, then a painful jolt of recognition, and finally, something profound, something akin to grief, etched deep into his features. He started toward Mr. Dunn's house, a nascent move towards us. but Mom, with a desperate, almost reflexive motion, caught his arm, pulling him back. They went inside together, leaving us in the agonizing limbo of observation. An hour later, a different car, sleek and unfamiliar, pulled into the driveway. A woman in a dark suit, carrying a worn leather briefcase, emerged. We watched, captivated, as she walked with an air of professional authority and entered our house. The three of them, Mom, Dad, and this enigmatic stranger conversed in the living room, their forms occasionally glimpsed through the window. Documents were carefully spread across the coffee table, a visual testament to the gravity of their discussion. Mom, her face blotchy and hair-stained, periodically wiped her eyes, while Dad remained, as ever, a stone-faced enigma, his expression unreadable. My sisters, it was later revealed, had laid the groundwork for this very moment. They meticulously explained what they'd done, not just in the frantic hours of my escape, but over years. The discreet calls they'd made, the cryptic reports they'd filed while I was still trapped in the suffocating silence of the basement, a spectral presence in their lives. They had gathered a mountain of evidence, a testament to their unwavering loyalty and forethought. Grainy photos of the dark, forgotten basement where I had existed. Surreptitious recordings of conversations that hinted at my presence, undeniable proof of my very existence. The woman, it turned out, was from Child Protective Services, and their relentless, careful reports had finally triggered a full-scale investigation. For identical children, a chilling narrative. One undocumented, medical tests performed without consent, years of educational neglect. The case, though laden with emotional complexities, was legally, devastatingly clear. By noon, our quiet suburban street became a bustling hive of official activity. More vehicles arrived, bringing police officers, stern-faced social workers, and uniformed medical personnel. Our house, once a fortress of secrets, was now transformed into a crime scene. The basement, my former prison, was meticulously photographed from every angle, evidence carefully collected, statements taken from every witness. They brought me to the hospital first, a blur of new faces and clinical efficiency. 13 years of subterranean existence had, predictably, left its indelible mark. Vitamin deficiencies, a pervasive muscle weakness that made even simple movements challenging, and an array of dental problems a stark inventory of neglect. But the doctors assured me, their voices kind and reassuring. Nothing irreversible, nothing, they reiterated, that couldn't be healed slowly, patiently, with time and dedicated care. My sisters, those unwavering guardians, never left my side. They took turns holding my hand during the unsettling examinations, their touch a grounding presence. They translated the bewildering medical terminology I couldn't comprehend, bridging the gap between clinical language and my sheltered understanding. And, most importantly, they made absolutely certain that every doctor, every nurse, every official, understood unequivocally that we were 4, not merely 3. The legal complexities, as anticipated, stretched into months, a tangled web of procedures, birth certificate applications, emotionally charged custody hearings, the grim specter of criminal charges. But that first day, nestled in a hospital bed, bathed in the unfamiliar warmth of sunlight streaming through wide windows, surrounded by my sisters who had risked absolutely everything for my sake, I felt something profoundly new, something that resonated deep within my being. I existed. No longer a phantom, no longer considered merely spare parts, or a macabre form of insurance, no longer a ghost haunting the forgotten basement, but a person. A living, breathing individual imbued with fundamental rights, with choices stretching before me, with the terrifying, exhilarating prospect of a future. The road ahead, I knew, was uncertain, a winding path fraught with unknowns. The looming shadow of foster care, the distinct possibility of separation from my sisters, and the definite need for therapy to unpack years of trauma, these were all daunting prospects. Yet, my sisters, in their extraordinary act of courage, had bestowed upon me the greatest gift imaginable. They had chosen me, unequivocally, over their own comfort, over their personal safety, over the fragile, deceptive peace of our family. They had, in the most profound sense, made me real. 3 days later, the crisp hospital discharge papers crinkled reassuringly in my trembling hands as we stood outside the main entrance, blinking in the bright afternoon sun. The preceding days had passed in a disorienting blur of fluorescent lights, antiseptic smells, and the endless drone of tests, evaluations, and official documentation. My sisters flanked me, their strong, unwavering presence a constant, tangible reminder that this wasn't some ephemeral dream, some cruel illusion. The social worker assigned to our case, Ms. Sebastian, a woman with kind, compassionate eyes who spoke in measured, calming tones about temporary placements and daunting court procedures, led us toward a discreet van, emblazoned with the state seal. I climbed into the vehicle, my legs still shaky, unsteady from years of painfully limited movement, a silent testament to my former confinement. The drive took us past our house, the one I had barely known beyond its basement confines. Yellow tape, a stark, undeniable barrier crisscrossed the front door, proclaiming its status as a site of investigation. Official vehicles lined the driveway, their presence a stark public declaration of the secret unveiled. Through the window, I caught a final glimpse of investigators, moving with methodical precision, carrying boxes from the basement. Evidence of my once hidden existence, being meticulously cataloged, painstakingly photographed, and finally, systematically filed away, transforming the shadows of my past into undeniable proof of my painful, yet miraculous, reality. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to what was to be our new home, a group residence. It was a sprawling, once elegant Victorian, now somewhat jarringly converted, its myriad windows seemingly designed for observation rather than charm, offering an unsettling lack of privacy. As we were led through its labyrinthine corridors, M. Sebastian, a woman whose crisp demeanor hinted at a deep-seated efficiency, meticulously outlined the rules. Our days would now be structured by shared rooms, precisely scheduled meals, and mandatory counseling sessions, a carefully calibrated existence he termed freedom with boundaries. My sisters were directed to one room, a shared space with their familiar faces, while I was ushered into another, a foreign territory shared with a girl named Victoria, who offered nothing more than a fleeting, indifferent glance upon my arrival. The bed, though narrow, boasted clean sheets, a stark contrast to the gritty, often damp surfaces of my past. A window, unlike the sealed grates I knew, actually opened, inviting in the cool, fresh air. Small, almost imperceptible improvements that, to me, felt like revolutionary luxuries compared to concrete floors and the stale, recycled air of my former confinement. That first night, sleep eluded me. Instead, I lay awake, meticulously cataloging these newfound differences, each one a profound victory in the quiet theater of my mind. No cameras tracked my every move, their unblinking eyes now absent. No locks barred my door, rendering the simple act of opening it an astonishing privilege. The ability to walk to the bathroom, unaided and unbidden, without the psychological burden of asking permission, felt nothing short of miraculous. These were not merely simple things, they were seismic shifts, the very foundations of normalcy, which for so long had been denied. A rhetorical question began to surface, persistently echoing in my thoughts. How could Mom have ever believed those flimsy metal brackets would truly restrain a determined 13-year-old? A girl who had already, with a nascent cunning, figured out the ducks mastered the subtle art of evasion and escape. Her subsequent, almost casual confidence as she hummed while drilling, seemingly oblivious to the gravity of her newly discovered secret child's ability to slip through ventilation shafts, struck me as bizarre. It was as if she were willfully ignoring the fundamental chasm in her understanding of reality. The ensuing weeks coalesced into an indistinguishable blur of endless appointments and evaluations. Psychologists, with their array of cryptic tests, probed the intricacies of my cognitive development, seeking to map the contours of a mind shaped by isolation. Doctors, with their gentle but firm hands, monitored my physical recovery, measuring the fragile regrowth of muscle and bone. Lawyers, a new and formidable presence, diligently prepared the documentation that would legally establish my very existence, transforming a shadow into a citizen. Each professional meticulously added their observations and diagnoses to an ever-growing dossier, a clinical narrative meticulously detailing the girl who'd lived in a basement, my sisters. Whenever feasible, accompanied me to these often exhausting sessions, or for identical faces a quiet, united front. We'd sit in sterile waiting rooms, sometimes drawing elaborate, fantastical staircases on discarded papers, subtly mirroring the curious, sometimes sympathetic, glances of other patients. They became my invaluable navigators, deciphering the bewildering jargon of insurance forms, translating complex medical terminology, and patiently explaining the intricacies of legal procedures that felt utterly alien to me. Together, we embarked on the bewildering journey of learning the intricate, often dehumanizing, bureaucracy of becoming real. 6 weeks after our escape, the custody hearings commenced, casting a long, somber shadow over our fragile new beginning. I watched, a silent observer from a hard wooden bench, as an impassioned procession of lawyers meticulously dissected the fragments of our shattered lives, each argument a battle waged over our uncertain future. Mom and Dad sat at separate tables, an unspoken chasm between them, their respective attorneys leaning in conspiratorially, whispering strategies. In the austere grandeur of the courtroom, stripped of the oppressive power of locked doors and security cameras, they appeared oddly diminished, their former omnipotence reduced to a fragile vulnerability. The evidence, painstakingly accumulated, mounted throughout the proceedings, chilling photographs of the basement, stark medical records detailing years of unauthorized blood draws, the cold, clinical insurance documents that had shockingly reduced my very existence to a mere financial calculation, an expendable line item on a ledger. Each damning piece meticulously built an unassailable case, reinforcing the undeniable truth that a return to that home was an impossibility. On the third day, Mom took the stand, a solitary figure under the harsh courtroom lights. She wore her best dress, the very one she'd worn during that ill-fated fundraiser escape, a subtle, perhaps unconscious, echo of her past deceptions. Her testimony wove a carefully constructed narrative, painting a picture of impossible choices and profound maternal love. She insisted, with a practiced sincerity, that she had merely sought to keep me safe, to shield me from a world that, she claimed, wouldn't understand. She had fed me, educated me, never abandoned me, unlike, she subtly implied, others might have. Was this her twisted definition of safety, of love? Dad's testimony, in stark contrast, was devoid of such emotional appeals, focusing instead on the cold, hard realities of financial pressures, the unforgiving insurance system that, he argued, unfairly penalized larger families, the crippling medical bills that would have, he declared, utterly bankrupted them. He presented a meticulously crafted array of spreadsheets, a meticulous accounting of allocated resources, as if my very existence could be dispassionately justified through careful financial planning, reducing a human life to a mere economic equation. Then came my sisters, a united front, their matching faces radiating a shared determination that filled the courtroom. They described, with unwavering voices, the bewildering discovery of me, the clandestine nightly visits, and the slow, dawning realization that true love should never, ever necessitate locks. Emma, with a quiet strength, showcased her encoded math homework, a testament to her ingenuity and our secret communication. Lily presented her vibrant paintings, each stroke concealing poignant, hidden messages that only we understood. Olivia, ever the researcher, submitted her meticulously compiled research on patient rights and the fundamental concept of bodily autonomy, transforming abstract principles into powerful testimony. Finally, it was my turn. A profound silence descended upon the courtroom as I began to speak, my voice, though soft, carrying the weight of 13 years. I described a life lived entirely through screens, a ghostly spectator to a world I could not touch. The lonely birthday candles, their flickering flames reflecting the isolation of wishes made in solitude. The medical tests, presented by Mom as acts of love, though in hindsight they were anything but. And then, the chilling moment of self-realization, the devastating epiphany that I existed only as potential replacement parts for my real siblings. The judge, a woman whose stern visage now seemed to soften with a profound weariness, deliberated for 2 long, agonizing days. When she returned, her ruling was comprehensive, leaving no ambiguity. Mom's parental rights were irrevocably terminated. Criminal charges were emphatically recommended, and a restraining order was issued prohibiting any contact until we reached the age of 18. The gavel descended with a sharp, resonant thud, a sound of definitive finality, not just on the proceedings, but on the very concept of the family we had once been. Foster placement became the next immediate, daunting hurdle. The system, accustomed to individual cases, visibly struggled with the unprecedented challenge of 4 identical teenagers, fiercely united in their refusal to be separated. Most traditional foster families simply couldn't accommodate quadruplets. Group homes, while an option, inevitably meant splintering our unbreakable bond. Sebastian, true to his earlier efficiency, worked tirelessly, his phone calls incessant, his petitions voluminous, his pursuit of exceptions relentless. The unexpected solution, however, arrived from a most serendipitous source. Dr. Nicholas, one of the physicians who had treated me, revealed that his brother managed a therapeutic foster home. This unique facility specialized in sibling groups, trauma cases, and children who clearly needed more than the conventional placement could offer. The home was a 2-hour drive away, a minor inconvenience when weighed against the overwhelming importance of staying together. We moved on a Tuesday, our 4 matching suitcases filled with donated clothes and new, official documentation marking the quiet, collective beginning of another chapter. The therapeutic home itself was a sprawling farmhouse, radiating a comforting warmth, strategically designed with separate wings to accommodate different sibling groups. We were assigned the East Wing, a comfortable quartet of bedrooms interconnected by a shared common area, a perfect blend of individual space and communal security. Our house parents, Mr. and Mrs. Dunn, were seasoned veterans, having fostered children for 2 decades. They possessed a deep, intuitive understanding of the delicate balance required, fostering individual growth while meticulously preserving the vital, irreplaceable bonds between siblings. They offered us something we desperately needed, space to adjust, and, perhaps most profoundly, the invaluable gift of time to slowly, cautiously, learn how to exist in a world suddenly brimming with choices. Initially, I found myself grappling with this newfound freedom, a concept as liberating as it was terrifying. 13 years of strict confinement had ingrained habits that proved remarkably tenacious. I instinctively hoarded food in my room, a survival mechanism from a scarcity-filled past, until Mrs. Dunn, with her gentle, patient demeanor, softly explained that the kitchen was, in fact, always available, always stocked. Similarly, I asked permission for every conceivable action, a reflex of servitude, until Mr. Dunn, with a kind but firm reminder, assured me that basic needs no longer required explicit approval. School enrollment, predictably, proved to be another formidable challenge. My education had been a patchwork quilt of smuggled textbooks and stolen lessons gleaned from my sister's homework. Placement tests, while revealing significant gaps in my formal knowledge, also surprisingly uncovered unexpected strengths and areas of intense, self-taught understanding. Consequently, I was placed in a modified program, an intensive, individualized curriculum designed to bridge the chasm of 13 years of missed formal schooling. While my sisters immersed themselves in the bustling world of the local high school, I worked diligently with a rotating cast of dedicated tutors. We meticulously crafted new routines around this enforced separation. Mornings began with shared breakfast, a quiet moment of togetherness. Afternoons were reserved for intense study sessions, where my sisters patiently guided me through concepts that, for them, came so naturally. Evenings often found us on long, meandering walks, our conversations a shared processing of the strange, sometimes overwhelming, new realities of our lives. Physical therapy became an integral part of my daily existence, a concerted effort to counteract years of muscle atrophy and the profound limitations of confined movement. My therapist, a pragmatic but encouraging woman, designed a regimen of exercises meticulously crafted to rebuild my strength, refine my coordination, and gradually expand my restricted range of motion. Each session was a challenging push against past boundaries, my muscles, once dormant, slowly reawakening, remembering how to function not merely for survival, but for a fuller, more dynamic existence. The therapist, with clinical precision, documented my progress in a series of charts and measurements, grip strength steadily improving, flexibility dramatically increasing, endurance building with each passing week. These were not just numbers, they were tangible, irrefutable proof that bodies, even after years of severe limitation, possessed an astonishing capacity to heal, adapt, and grow stronger. Group therapy sessions at the foster home brought together a diverse collection of children, each bearing their own unique traumas, yet all united by remarkably similar needs. We sat in a circle, a space of shared vulnerability, some tentatively sharing fragments of their stories, others maintaining a respectful, comforting silence as needed. In those sessions, a profound realization began to take root within me, that basement prisons manifested in myriad forms, and that the path to survival, deeply personal and often agonizing, looked strikingly different for everyone. Individual counseling, however, proved to be an even more arduous journey. My therapist, Dr. MC Victoria, specialized in cases precisely like mine. Her reputation built on an expertise in the most complex forms of childhood trauma. She possessed a remarkable array of gentle methods for slowly, carefully drawing out the lingering weight of past memories, particularly the complex and profoundly damaging psychology of being raised not as cherished children, but as mere spare parts, continued to unfold. We painstakingly worked through layer upon layer of insidious conditioning, unraveling the warped beliefs subtly instilled by parents who viewed me, fundamentally, as an insurance policy, a commodity, rather than a beloved daughter. Meanwhile, the relentless gears of the legal proceedings ground on in the background, a constant, low hum beneath the surface of our new lives. Criminal charges, a terrifying yet validating cascade of accusations, were formally filed against our parents, egregious fraud pertaining to those elaborate insurance claims, horrifying counts of child endangerment, and the chilling reality of unlawful imprisonment. The list, a stark indictment of their cruelty, seemed to expand with each passing day as meticulous investigators unearthed a sickening trove of additional, damning evidence. We endured lengthy depositions, sitting under harsh fluorescent lights, meticulously recounting the raw, agonizing details of our confinement for the official records. A painful but necessary step towards justice. Our parents' trials, those looming specters, were tentatively scheduled for the following year. Their legal teams, in a desperate bid to mitigate the inevitable, were already deep in negotiations for plea deals, seeking drastically reduced sentences in exchange for a belated admission of guilt. Miss Sebastian, our steadfast advocate, became the conduit for these updates, each new development, no matter how small, adding another small brick of closure to the gaping wounds of our past. Financial restitution, a tangible acknowledgement of our stolen childhoods, became an integral component of the legal resolution. This wasn't merely about money, it was about reclaiming what was unjustly taken. We spoke of the vast sums of insurance money they had fraudulently claimed for triplets, all while callously concealing the existence of a fourth child me. The astronomical medical expenses racked up for countless, utterly unnecessary tests, procedures designed not to heal but to perpetuate the elaborate deception. The phantom education costs for homeschooling that, in truth, never transpired. All these meticulously tallied figures coalesced into a trust fund, a glimmer of financial security painstakingly built from the ruins of their crimes, a promise for our future. Winter, typically a season of coziness and cheer, arrived laden with its own unique set of challenges and emotional complexities. The holidays, those festive markers of communal joy, drew near traditions we had, for so long, never been permitted to share equally, always relegated to the shadows. The foster home, a haven of understanding, thoughtfully organized celebrations designed to acknowledge and respect diverse backgrounds and myriad individual needs. We gathered, a true family, to decorate a Christmas tree, carefully placing for identical, perfectly matched ornaments among dozens of unique, colorful baubles, a subtle, yet powerful symbol of our unbreakable bond amidst a world of individuality. On Christmas morning, a moment forever etched in my memory, I experienced my first genuine gift exchange, utterly devoid of the oppressive hierarchy that had defined our lives. There was no more watching through a grimy screen as others unwrapped their treasures. No single, meager gift silently slid beneath a locked basement door. Instead, there were just four sisters, indistinguishable from the other foster siblings, everyone equally included, equally cherished. The sheer normalcy of it all felt profoundly surreal. Sitting at a communal table without the chilling presence of locks, having the freedom to choose my own food portions. The exhilarating simplicity of walking outside without the suffocating gaze of constant surveillance, each seemingly ordinary moment transformed into an extraordinary revelation. A miracle. When you had lived for so long without them. Our academic progress, though initially slow, proved remarkably steady. My dedicated tutors, true pedagogical artisans, skillfully adjusted lessons to my unique learning style, diligently filling the vast gaps in my knowledge while deftly building upon my burgeoning strengths. Mathematics, surprisingly, came with an almost effortless ease. The 13 years spent meticulously calculating every conceivable escape possibility had, I realized, inadvertently forged formidable analytical skills, a sharp mind honed by desperation. My reading comprehension was advanced, far beyond my chronological age, a direct result of my clandestine studies of medical documents and complex insurance policies during my imprisonment. Science, particularly the intricate wonders of biology, utterly captivated me, though the profound irony of a spare part delving into the very essence of life wasn't lost on anyone. Least of all myself. As spring burst forth, so too did conversations about the future, vibrant and brimming with possibility. College applications consumed my sisters, while my own path involved meticulous planning for continued education, a personal catch-up game. The trust fund, that unexpected legacy born from our parents' crimes, would meticulously cover all our expenses, and undeniable, almost poetic justice their attempts to limit our futures inadvertently funding them instead. We pored over brochures and websites, carefully researching schools that would keep us geographically close, nurturing our precious bond. while simultaneously allowing for robust individual growth and exploration. The anniversary of our dramatic escape passed quietly, without fanfare. 1 year since that window shattered, since the piercing alarms wailed their freedom song, since we had stood, barefoot and terrified, in the yard. We marked it with a small, intimate ceremony, lighting candles not for wishes or forgotten dreams, but for a solemn, powerful remembrance of our endurance and our liberation. May arrived, bringing with it the definitive sentencing of Mom and Dad, 3 to 5 years for the myriad charges leveled against them, with a distant possibility of parole. The judge, in his measured deliberations, weighed their lack of prior criminal records and their grudging cooperation with authorities. We made a conscious, collective decision not to attend the sentencing, choosing instead to decisively move forward, to continue building our futures, rather than bear witness to their belated, meager consequences. Summer unfurled, bringing with it a cascade of triumphant new milestones. I passed my GED equivalency exam, a personal Everest conquered. My sisters, brilliant and resilient, graduated high school with well-deserved honors. We attended their ceremony, a sea of identical faces in the crowd, no longer tragically divided by cruel circumstances, but united by an unbreakable bond. The therapeutic foster home, having served as our sanctuary, began the vital process of preparing us for the next thrilling chapter, independent living. We immersed ourselves in budgeting classes, cooking lessons, and all the essential life skills that implicitly assume futures stretching far beyond the confines of locked doors. We learned, side by side, diligently filling the profound gaps in our practical knowledge. My physical health, too, continued its remarkable trajectory of improvement. The debilitating vitamin deficiencies had resolved, my dental work was finally completed, and my muscle tone steadily approached a healthy, normal range for someone my age. Each successive medical checkup served as a testament to progress, our bodies, once neglected and starved, diligently healing from years of systematic deprivation. As our 18th birthday loomed on the horizon, weighty decisions began to gather like storm clouds. The foster care system, having cradled us through our initial fragile steps towards freedom, would soon release us. College acceptance letters fluttered in for my sisters, bringing with them a thrilling sense of anticipation. I, too, had been accepted into community college, a pragmatic and exciting starting point for catching up on the formal education I had been so cruelly denied. The trust fund, our hard-won financial bedrock, would undeniably support us, yet we understood, with a profound clarity, that true independence encompassed far more than mere financial security. We unanimously decided to rent an apartment together, a shared sanctuary nestled conveniently close to the community college campus. It boasted 4 distinct bedrooms, a stark contrast to our shared confinement, and, crucially, no basement to trigger traumatic memories. The windows opened wide, welcoming the sunlight and fresh air, a symbol of freedom. Multiple exits, a small but vital detail, offered a sense of control and safety, a security that meant protection, not imprisonment. It was to be a dedicated space where we could collectively continue our healing journeys while diligently building the futures we so fiercely deserved. The move was a gradual, deliberate unfurling, each step imbued with profound significance. Purchasing furniture, once an unimaginable luxury, felt like a sacred act of permanence, choosing items not for mere survival, but for the deliberate construction of a home. Every single decision, from the precise shade of paint on the walls to the strategic placement of a sofa, was finally ours to make, a tangible reclaiming of agency. We chose rules that were designed to protect us, to nurture our growth, rather than to confine our spirits. On our actual birthday, we held our own celebration, an intimate gathering filled with quiet triumph. Oh, the sheer, intoxicating liberation of choosing paint colors after 13 years of unrelenting basement gray. It felt, almost literally, like picking out an entire new personality from the aisles of a hardware store. Could there be any more pressure to get your very first real decision right? We shared a cake adorned with 18 flickering candles, divided equally democratically. No hierarchy, no hidden children, just 4 sisters, undeniably identical in appearance, yet each a universe unto herself, who had not only survived the impossible, but had actively thrived, simply by refusing to abandon each other. That fall semester, I bravely enrolled in my first college classes. General education requirements filled my schedule, allowing me precious time to explore my burgeoning interests and decide on a major. The sheer vastness of the campus, a sprawling labyrinth of buildings and faces, felt utterly overwhelming after so many years of suffocating confinement. But my sisters, ever my anchors, patiently walked me through the daunting registration process, meticulously showed me the layout of the buildings, and gently helped me navigate this bewildering, exciting new world. On that very first day of classes, I sat in a bustling lecture hall, surrounded by hundreds of strangers who knew absolutely nothing of basements or spare parts. I existed, for the first time, simply as another student, anonymous in the most profoundly liberating way. My notebook, a symbol of newfound freedom, lay open to a fresh, pristine page, ready to be filled with knowledge deliberately chosen, passionately pursued, rather than covertly smuggled. The professor began his lecture, delving into the intricate world of cellular biology. I took notes furiously, understanding far more than I had anticipated, a direct consequence of those stolen years spent poring over my own medical records in secret. Education, I realized with a profound sense of awe, was no longer a survival strategy. It was a choice, a fervent desire to learn because I wanted to, not because I had to stay smart enough to escape. After class, I met my sisters for lunch in the bustling cafeteria, a vibrant, noisy hub of student life. We sat together at a table, proudly visible to everyone, no longer tragically divided by floors and locks. Emma, her eyes sparkling, passionately discussed the intricacies of her engineering courses. Lily, ever the dreamer, vividly described her captivating art history class, her hands gesturing expressively. Olivia, already brimming with purpose, shared her infectious excitement about her demanding friend requirements. For identical faces, yes, but now each charting uniquely diverging paths, yet still held together, inextricably bound by our shared, crucible-forged history and an unbreakable, consciously chosen bond. We had survived the unimaginable by refusing to see each other as competitors for dwindling resources or elusive love. And now, we thrived, we flourished, by continuing that very same powerful choice, fiercely supporting each other's individual growth while meticulously nurturing our profound, lifelong connection. That evening, I found myself sitting at my new desk in our apartment, textbooks spread before me like an open invitation. No cameras watched my every move, no oppressive locks confined my spirit. The window beside me, a portal to a world I now belong to, opened wide, letting in the cool evening air and the distant, comforting sounds of normal life. I opened my laptop, a simple act, and began typing my very first college assignment. The prompt was disarmingly simple, a personal essay about overcoming challenges. I stared at the blank, unforgiving page, an immense, almost insurmountable task before me. How, I wondered, could I possibly condense 13 years of an existence defined by unthinkable cruelty, by being an insurance policy, rather than a child, into a few acceptable paragraphs? How could anyone truly explain what it meant to exist as insurance? The question hung in the quiet air, heavy with the weight of my past, yet also pulsating with the nascent hope of a future finally, truly, my own. How does one articulate the raw, unvarnished truth of an extraordinary life without it morphing into something embellished or fabricated? Especially when the reality itself feels stranger than fiction. It's a delicate balance, walking the tightrope between stark truth and narrative credibility. Imagine the profound challenge. How do you even begin to describe the very essence of freedom, its vast, boundless expanse? Its intoxicating scent to souls who have never felt the crushing weight of confinement, who have never tasted the bitter ashes of deprivation. It's like trying to paint the colors of the rainbow for someone born blind, a truly insurmountable task, isn't it? Despite the immense weight of the topic, the labyrinthine complexity of the emotions, I found myself instinctively drawn to a simple, unadorned beginning. For 13 arduous years, an eternity in a young life, I had been unwittingly groomed, meticulously shaped for an existence that, by all accounts, was never meant to be mine. It was a cruel irony, a life sentence served in anticipation of a future that felt both inevitable and utterly alien. Can you imagine the profound cognitive dissonance of such a paradox? Once that initial dam broke, the words, a torrent of raw emotion and lived experience, surged forth, unimpeded. It was as if a long-held breath finally exhaled, finding its rhythm on the page. And with each keystroke, each carefully chosen phrase, the unvarnished truth, stripped bare of all artifice, found its undeniable, unapologetic place on the crisp white page. It wasn't just writing, it was an excavation. This wasn't a plea for pity, nor a calculated attempt to exploit the inherent shock value of my story. No, this was something far more fundamental, a solemn, unwavering testimony, a chronicle designed to illuminate the profound, often unexpected, myriad forms that sheer human survival can assume. It was a testament to resilience, plain and simple. It was an uncomfortable, wrenching truth to confront, yet undeniably real. How the very familial bonds meant to nurture and protect could, in insidious ways, transform into inescapable prisons. Their walls built not of stone, but of expectation and control. And how the emotion we so readily define as love could, under certain twisted circumstances, become the most impenetrable of locks, binding you to a fate you never chose. What a cruel perversion of those sacred concepts, isn't it? More than that, it was an assertion that simply to exist, to draw breath, to claim space, when others had sought to diminish or erase you, could in itself be the most profound, most defiant act of rebellion imaginable. Every moment lived was a quiet revolution. As I poured these confessions onto the screen, the gentle hum of normalcy provided a stark, yet soothing, counterpoint. In the adjoining living room, my sisters were immersed in their studies, their focused concentration a testament to their own burgeoning independence. Their quiet presence, the soft rustle of turning pages, the occasional murmur of whispered questions, it all formed a comforting, almost tangible, backdrop to my solitary task. A gentle anchor in the shifting sea of my past. We, the four of us, had painstakingly, yet purposefully, woven a new tapestry of domestic life. Our days were now structured not by fear or arbitrary decree, but by the rhythm of school schedules, the shared warmth of communal meals, designated quiet hours for study and reflection, and carefully constructed boundaries, not walls designed to divide and isolate, but permeable membranes intended to protect our nascent peace, to nurture our individual growths while strengthening our collective bond. This was a deliberate construction of freedom. These weren't imposed edicts, handed down from an unyielding authority. No, these were the very rules, the guiding principles, that we, as equals, had painstakingly chosen together, each sister contributing to the framework of our shared liberty. What a fundamental shift in power dynamic, a true embrace of self-governance. Gazing beyond the immediate horizon of the present, the future unfurled before us a vast, uncharted landscape, undeniably uncertain in its contours, yet exhilaratingly, undeniably ours to sculpt, to paint, to bring into vibrant existence. The canvas was blank, but the brushes were in our hands. Oh, there would undoubtedly be new trials, fresh obstacles to surmount. We would have to painstakingly learn how to navigate the intricate labyrinth of human relationships without the suffocating, familiar framework of a rigid hierarchy. Without the preordained roles that once dictated our every interaction. Career paths would demand choices unburdened by predetermined expectations, and perhaps most crucially, we face the ongoing, sometimes exhausting, but ultimately liberating process of learning to simply exist as whole, independent individuals, rather than mere ancillary figures, someone's carefully laid contingency plan. It was a journey of self-discovery, fraught with the beautiful unknown. Yet, amidst these sweeping contemplations of past and future, tonight's reality was beautifully, refreshingly mundane. There was homework to be diligently completed, the familiar anticipation of classes to attend tomorrow, and, most profoundly, a new, authentic life to meticulously construct, brick by brick, from the solid, unshakable foundation of finally, truly being real. My fingers danced across the keyboard with a newfound steadiness, each rhythmic tap a testament to my transformation. I was no longer that spectral presence, that forgotten shadow haunting the depths of a dusty basement. Instead, I was tangibly, undeniably present. A student grappling with demanding assignments, a sister empowered by an expansive universe of choices, a person a real, breathing, vibrant person with a palpable, self-determined future stretching out before me. As the digital clock on my screen edged closer to the stroke of midnight, casting its faint glow across my weary but satisfied face, the essay, this crucial testament, finally reached its resonant conclusion. With a deep, cleansing breath, I clicked save, sealing my truth within the digital confines of the document. The soft bed as I closed my laptop felt like the closing of a chapter, a definitive pause. As I prepared for bed, my gaze drifted towards the window, where the city lights, a vibrant tapestry of distant human lives, shimmered and twinkled with an almost audacious array of possibilities. Each tiny gleam a promise whispered into the night. A bittersweet thought, a stark counterpoint to my burgeoning freedom, briefly flickered through my mind. Somewhere across this sprawling, indifferent city, cloistered within the cold, unforgiving confines of separate cells, our parents continued to serve out the sentences they had earned. Their reality, so different from ours, a constant, quiet echo. Yet here, within the comforting, protective walls of this humble apartment, the four of us bound by an unbreakable thread of shared experience and burgeoning hope steadfastly, courageously, continued the arduous, yet ultimately triumphant, process of transmuting mere survival into something far richer, far more vibrant, a full, robust, unapologetic living. With a purposeful click, I set my alarm, establishing a clear intent for the coming morning. My phone, a tether to the outside world, found its charging port. Then, with a simple, decisive flick of a switch, I plunged the room into a deep, enveloping darkness, a darkness not imposed, not terrifying, but one that I, for the first time, held the sovereign power to banish at will. This was my space, my control. As slumber finally claimed me, my consciousness drifted into the comforting symphony of my sister's gentle breathing, a soft, rhythmic chorus emanating from their nearby rooms. A profound lullaby of presence and safety. We were no longer disparate, expendable spare parts, fragmented and incomplete. No, we were indivisible, integrated, gloriously whole people, each claiming our rightful place in the world. Our very existence, our vibrant reality, had been meticulously, courageously claimed through an unwavering, stubborn refusal to be broken apart, to be pitted against one another, to be divided and conquered. Our unity was our strength, our defiant declaration. The inevitable beep, beep, beep of the alarm would, without a doubt, usher in tomorrow's fresh set of challenges, new intellectual lessons to absorb, continued emotional healing to pursue, and the relentless, yet ultimately rewarding, ongoing work of meticulously building lives demonstrably worth living. But for this sacred night, under the mantle of stars and the quiet hum of our reborn home, we were simply, profoundly, four sisters who had, against all odds, consciously, definitively chosen each other over the seductive allure of comfort, embraced the stark, unyielding truth over the suffocating shroud of silence, and defiantly grasped freedom, even when it meant forsaking the illusion of safety. And that extraordinary choice, that fundamental, life-affirming decision, meticulously renewed each day through countless small, unassuming acts of fierce independence and profound connection. Precisely this, was the very bedrock upon which we continue to build and claim our existence. Not as mere contingency plans for someone else's narrative, but as unequivocally ourselves, complete, real, utterly, gloriously free. Thank you for allowing me the intimate space to wander, to ponder, to articulate these complex thoughts out loud with you today. Isn't it truly remarkable, almost delightfully ironic, how just a handful of carefully posed questions can utterly, profoundly flip one's entire perspective? Like turning a familiar landscape on its head, until our paths converge again. And if you've journeyed with me all the way to this concluding thought, I would be deeply grateful if you'd grace me with a comment. I genuinely cherish and savor every single one of your insights.